I took my wife's laptop to send an email only to find my son-in-law's messages and videos in a forbidden folder. When I confronted her, she said, "He married my daughter and is only taking care of me too since you are always busy with work." I smiled and left. What happened next was rather unbelievable. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Sarah Norman from Alaska. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I never intended to look through her things. That wasn't who I was. I respected privacy, even in a marriage that had started feeling more like a business partnership than a romantic bond. I was the provider. The one always buried in contracts, market reports, and client dinners. She was the homemaker, though the home didn't feel much like one lately. Still, I believed in trust, or at least I told myself I did. But that night, something shifted. It was late, nearly 11 p.m., and I had just finished a call with a stubborn investor who wanted changes to a development plan we'd already broken ground on. My laptop had died in the middle of the call, and I needed to send a follow-up email before I lost momentum. Her laptop was right there on the dining table, screen half lit, like it had been waiting for me. I figured, why not? I opened it without hesitation, planning only to send a quick message to my assistant. But as I minimized her browser tabs to find the desktop, one folder stood out. It wasn't the name exactly, for underscores only, but the way it was slightly buried beneath other folders. Half hidden, tucked away. I hovered over it, my hand frozen on the trackpad. Maybe it was just some old financial documents or health records, something she didn't want accidentally deleted. But something deeper pulled at me. Maybe it was the way she had been distant lately, or how her phone always seemed glued to her hand when she thought I wasn't looking. Maybe it was the way she had started spending more time at our daughter's place, saying she wanted to help with the baby even when my daughter insisted she had it handled. I opened the folder. Inside were several video files and screenshots, all labeled with vague but suspicious titles. March_trip, late_night, J. My stomach twisted. Still, part of me wanted to believe it was innocent. Maybe it was family videos, or some surprise she was planning. I clicked the first file. What I saw made my chest cave in. It was grainy hotel room footage, shaky, like it had been filmed in secret. But there was no mistaking the voices. Hers. And his. My son-in-law. My daughter's husband. Laughing. Whispering. Moaning. My hand shot to my mouth. I paused it, then played it again, as if I'd misunderstood the first time. I hadn't. It was real. It was happening. I was watching my wife betray not just me, but our daughter. And she had saved it. Labeled it. Stored it like a keepsake. I didn't move for a long time. Just sat there, staring at the screen, heart pounding so hard I thought it might tear through my chest. My mind couldn't grasp it, couldn't process how something so grotesque could exist in my house, under my roof, on a device I'd probably paid for. Every moment I had missed a dinner for work, every time I'd said, "I'll make it up to you," every sacrifice I thought I was making for our future, it all twisted into a cruel joke. And what made it worse was knowing she hadn't even tried to hide it well. She thought I'd never look. She thought I trusted her too much. Or maybe she just didn't care. When I confronted her, she was in bed, scrolling on her phone like it was any other night. I walked in with the laptop in hand. The video paused at a frame where they were both half naked, faces clearly visible. I didn't raise my voice, didn't throw anything, just held it out and said, "Care to explain this?" She looked up, blinked once, and then, "God help me." She smirked. "He married my daughter," she said calmly, like she was explaining why the dishwasher hadn't been emptied. "And he's only taking care of me too since you're always busy with work." That was it. No panic, no remorse, no fear, just a twisted sort of entitlement that left me stunned. I didn't respond, just stood there for a second, absorbing the words, watching the way she went right back to scrolling like nothing had happened. It hit me then, not just the betrayal, but the complete lack of guilt. She didn't see it as cheating. She saw it as retribution, as if my job, my long hours, my financial sacrifices somehow excused what she had done. I nodded slowly, closed the laptop, and walked out of the room. In that moment, I remembered the prenup. We had signed it when we married, mostly at my lawyer's insistence. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, just a precaution. But buried in the fine print was a clause. Infidelity voids all claims to marital property. She had just walked herself into a trap. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, laptop on my knees, forwarding every file to my personal email, then to my lawyer. I also sent a copy to my daughter. I debated that last part. It felt cruel, but I couldn't justify keeping it from her. She deserved to know who she had married, what kind of woman her mother truly was. My hands shook as I typed out the message. I'm sorry you have to see this, but you need to know. Call me when you can. I hit send. My phone buzzed with delivery confirmations. I waited, staring out the window into the dark street, wondering how the hell we got here. By sunrise, the world looked the same, but nothing in my life was untouched. My wife hadn't come out of the bedroom. I didn't go back in. I just left, got in my car, drove to my office, and asked my assistant to bring me coffee and a copy of our prenup from the archives. She didn't ask why. She just nodded, polite and professional. Around 9 a.m., my phone rang. It was my daughter. I picked up, and all I could hear was her sobbing, loud, gasping sobs that cracked my heart open. She couldn't even speak, just kept saying, "No, no, no," over and over. That's when I knew. She'd seen the videos, and her life was now as shattered as mine. I came home that evening later than usual, not because I had anything urgent at work, but because I didn't want to see her. I sat in my office longer than I needed to, just staring at the wall while the inbox piled up. My assistant knocked once, gently, then left a manila folder on the edge of my desk, my copy of the prenup. The terms stared back at me like a ticking clock, each clause a reminder of how carefully I had once protected myself, never thinking I'd need it. I drove home in silence. No radio, no calls, just the ticking of the blinker when I turned onto our street, wondering what kind of woman was waiting for me behind that door. I already knew the answer. I just wasn't sure what I was going to say. She was in the kitchen this time, cooking, her specialty, rosemary chicken with lemon risotto. The smell wafted down the hallway like everything was fine, like it was just another Thursday. She wore her satin robe, hair pinned up like she hadn't just lit a match to our family. I stood in the doorway, watching her move around the stove like she was auditioning for the role of loyal wife in some drama that didn't exist. She didn't notice me at first, or maybe she did and pretended not to. When she finally turned and saw me, she smiled, wiped her hands on a towel, and said, "You're home late. Hungry?" Like I hadn't uncovered the most revolting betrayal I'd ever known. I sent the videos to my lawyer, I said flatly, not moving from the doorway. Her smile faltered, just slightly, before she regained composure. She placed the towel on the counter with mechanical precision and leaned against the marble island. "And what exactly do you think that's going to do?" she asked, like this was some negotiation. I told her about the prenup, about the clause she clearly never read or conveniently forgot. Her face changed then. Not fear, not remorse, just irritation, like I was being dramatic. "You're really going to throw away everything because of one mistake?" she said. I laughed. Actually laughed. "A mistake," I repeated. "You filmed your affair. Multiple times. Categorized it. Stored it on the laptop we both use. That's not a mistake. That's a decision." She crossed her arms, staring at me like I was the unreasonable one. "You weren't here. Ever. Always at work, always distracted, always gone. You stopped touching me. You stopped seeing me." Her voice rose, accusatory, sharp. I was lonely, and he was there. He listened. He made me feel alive again. "You think a paycheck makes up for that?" My jaw clenched. I felt something inside me, rage, grief, disbelief, start to boil. "He's your daughter's husband," I said, low and cold. "You didn't just cheat on me. You destroyed our family. You shattered her world. And now you want to blame me because I was working to keep this damn house running." The argument escalated quickly, voices echoing off the high ceilings of the kitchen. She slammed a pan down on the stove, rice flying up like sparks. I told her she disgusted me. She called me emotionally unavailable. I said she was a narcissist. She said I was never really present. We stood there, hurling years of resentment across the granite countertop. Two strangers who had once been in love, now spitting venom through clenched teeth. At one point, I shouted, "Did you ever think about our daughter? Did it ever cross your mind what this would do to her?" Her eyes flickered, just for a second, and then she said the thing that burned itself into my brain. "She's stronger than you think. She'll get over it." That's when I knew there was no saving it. Not the marriage, not the trust, not the woman I thought I knew. I turned and walked out. I heard her call after me. Something about talking, about fixing it, but I didn't respond. I locked myself in the guest room that night, barely sleeping. I could still smell the damn rosemary on my clothes. Every breath felt contaminated. Every thought circled the same loop. How do you sleep with your daughter's husband and still expect forgiveness? The next morning, she tried to be sweet. She brought me coffee, knocked on the door like we were newlyweds in the middle of a tiff. I didn't answer. Eventually, she left it on the hallway floor like an offering. I poured it down the bathroom sink. My phone buzzed again, messages from our daughter. She was spiraling. Her texts were chaotic, heartbreaking. "I can't believe this. I feel sick." He's not even denying it. She said he admitted it. Said it just happened a few times. Said it wasn't serious. That made me laugh again, bitter and loud. Not serious? It was filmed, labeled, treasured. It wasn't just physical, it was intentional. Later that day, she tried another approach. She came into the living room with a softer tone, tears in her eyes, and said, "Look, I know I hurt you. I know it was wrong. But can't we try counseling? Don't throw away 20 years just like that." I stared at her, genuinely stunned at her nerve. "You threw it away," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You burned it to the ground. And now you want me to sift through the ashes and pretend there's something worth saving." That night, I made an appointment with my lawyer. Divorce proceedings would start immediately. The prenup ensured she wouldn't get the properties, the stocks, the investments, nothing. Just her clothes, her guilt, and the echo of what she destroyed. She must have sensed it too, because I started finding her crying in rooms when she thought I wasn't looking. But even then, it felt rehearsed. Like she was mourning the loss of a lifestyle, not the loss of love. Real grief looks different. I know because I saw it in my daughter's texts. By the end of the week, I had moved into a temporary apartment downtown. It wasn't glamorous, just a two-bedroom with thin walls and bad lighting. But it was mine. It was quiet. And it didn't smell like lies. I unpacked slowly, one box at a time, trying to breathe again. Trying to think without the hum of betrayal in the background. My phone stayed on silent most of the time. I only answered when my daughter called. She had left her husband, took the baby, and moved in with a friend. She said she didn't want to see her mother. Said she couldn't. I didn't blame her. The first time she screamed, I thought something had happened to the baby. My heart dropped. It was a raw, visceral sound on the other end of the phone. No words at first, just pain. The kind that comes from the deepest place in the gut. The kind that breaks something inside you when you hear it. I pulled the phone away from my ear, stunned. Then brought it back and whispered, "Sweetheart, talk to me. What's going on?" She finally choked out the words. She admitted it. Just like that. My daughter, my only child, crying in the kind of way that makes a father feel like a failure. Like I hadn't protected her from the one person she should have always been safe with, her own mother. I had sent her the files 2 nights earlier. A Dropbox link, password protected, with a message that simply said, "I'm sorry. You need to see this for yourself." I didn't have the strength to call. I couldn't find the words. I thought she would block me, or deny it, or maybe pretend not to watch them. But she did. And then she confronted him. She told me he didn't even try to lie. Just sat there, stared at the wall, and said, "It wasn't supposed to mean anything." That phrase came up again and again. It didn't mean anything. As if that could patch the hole he'd torn through her heart. As if screwing her mother was some meaningless accident. She told me she threw a coffee mug at him. Missed by inches. It shattered against the kitchen wall while their infant son started crying in the high chair. She said that's when she knew it was over. Not just with him, she whispered through heavy breaths. With her too. "She's dead to me now, Dad." I didn't respond. I didn't know how. How do you tell your daughter that the woman who raised her, the woman who braided her hair and sang to her when she had fevers, was capable of sleeping with her husband, of filming it, of saving it, of gaslighting both of us like we were the ones who broke the family. Later that night, my daughter showed up at my apartment. No warning, just the sound of fists pounding on the door, followed by her voice. "Dad, open up, please." When I opened the door, she was standing there with red eyes, baby on her hip, diaper bag slung over her shoulder like she had just survived a war. She came in without asking, set the baby down on the couch, paced the room like she couldn't breathe. "How long?" she asked. "Do you know how long it went on?" I told her I didn't. I had no idea. I had only seen the videos and the messages. She laughed bitterly. Of course, the videos. Like a souvenir of betrayal. I hated that she had to see them, but I knew she'd hate me more if I hadn't told her. She stayed that night. We barely talked. She cried on the pull-out couch while her son slept between us. I sat in the armchair, staring out the window at the blinking red light on top of a nearby building. I thought about all the Thanksgivings, the birthdays, the moments we had all shared in what now felt like a lie. My wife, ex-wife, soon enough, had smiled across the table at our daughter while sleeping with her husband. That's not just betrayal. That's something darker, something pathological. And my daughter? She was the collateral damage, the one who had to look at her own child and know he came from a man who betrayed her in the most grotesque way possible. The fallout started spreading fast. My daughter told her two closest friends first. One of them called me crying the next day, said she couldn't believe it, that she had always looked up to my wife. I didn't know what to say. The truth was, so had I. For a long time, I thought I had married a woman who understood sacrifice, who valued family, who believed in loyalty. But I hadn't. I'd married someone who saw love as transactional, who only stayed as long as the benefits outweighed the consequences. Once those shifted, she jumped ship and set fire to the deck. My phone buzzed the following afternoon with an email from her. Subject line, "Please talk to me." I didn't open it, but I read the preview text. I never meant to hurt anyone. I made a terrible mistake. Can we please just... I archived it. Later that day, I got another message, this time from her sister. A voice memo. I hesitated but played it. She sounded tired. Worn out. "I'm not defending her," she said. "But she's a mess. She's not eating. She's not sleeping. She keeps saying she lost everything. Maybe you could just meet her once. Let her explain, even if you never forgive her." I turned off my phone. I didn't need an explanation. I had the videos. I had the look on my daughter's face when she screamed into the phone. What more was there to say? The next escalation came on a Saturday morning. I had just made pancakes for my grandson. My first attempt at being a full-time granddad, which I was quickly learning meant a lot of mess and almost no silence. Then came the knock at the door. Not a gentle one. A desperate, pounding one. I opened it to find my wife standing there. No makeup, wild hair, hoodie over her pajamas. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Please," she said, breathless. "Please, I need to talk to her." I stepped into the doorway, blocking her view. "You don't belong here," I said. "You made that choice." Her eyes darted past me, trying to see inside. "I'm her mother," she whispered, voice cracking. "I know I messed up, but I can't lose her. I can't lose both of you." That was the moment my daughter came around the corner, baby in her arms. She saw her mother and froze. My wife's eyes lit up. Hope, desperation, all colliding in one fractured expression. She stepped forward. "Sweetheart, please." But my daughter raised her hand. One firm gesture. "Don't," she said. "Don't you dare call me that. You slept with my husband. You broke our family." There's nothing left to say. My wife sobbed, begged, dropped to her knees on the doormat. I was lonely. I wasn't thinking. I thought he cared about me. I didn't mean to hurt you. But my daughter just stood there, trembling. "You didn't just hurt me. You humiliated me. You stole from me. You're dead to me." I closed the door slowly, blocking out her cries. My grandson started crying too, his small body shivering against his mother's chest. The silence after that felt louder than anything I'd ever experienced. Courtrooms have a smell, like paper, dust, and unease. The kind of place where silence weighs differently, thicker, as if justice itself is listening. I hadn't stepped foot in one since a zoning dispute years ago, and back then it felt procedural, distant. But this time, it was personal. Bone-deep personal. I sat on the plaintiff's side, flanked by my attorney, wearing a charcoal suit I hadn't worn since our 20th anniversary. It still fit, but nothing about it felt familiar. Across the aisle, she sat alone at first. No lawyer. Just her, hands folded, eyes darting nervously across the floor like a student who didn't study for the final. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. She hadn't changed much, but her presence had shrunk. The woman who once walked into rooms with her head high and shoulders back now looked like she was hoping the floor would swallow her whole. When her attorney arrived, some new face she clearly hadn't vetted well. He whispered something to her, probably about how weak her position was. She nodded, but I could see it, the flicker of panic. The kind you can't hide when you know what's coming. The judge entered, stern and seasoned. A woman, which I'll admit gave me a flicker of anxiety. Not because I thought she'd be unfair, but because I knew how manipulative my wife could be when she wanted sympathy. She could cry on cue, twist her voice into something fragile. I'd seen her turn anger into victimhood more times than I could count. But this time, she didn't know what I had prepared. She didn't know that the full contents of that for_only folder were now carefully indexed, time-stamped, and sitting in a flash drive in my attorney's briefcase. Every moan, every text, every "I miss you already." It was all evidence now. The opening statements were straightforward. My lawyer laid it out calmly. Marital infidelity involving the petitioner's spouse and his daughter's husband, with proof including video files, messages, and location data. No embellishment. Just facts. Cold, brutal, irrefutable facts. Her lawyer tried a different approach. Emotional abandonment, he said. Lack of intimacy. Years of feeling invisible. He tried to paint her as neglected, desperate, a woman who made a terrible mistake because she wasn't seen. I clenched my jaw but said nothing. That was their only move. Turn the betrayal into a cry for help. As if screwing her son-in-law wasn't a choice, but a symptom. Then came the evidence review. My lawyer stood, walked to the center of the courtroom, and pulled out a printed transcript. Exhibit A, he said. A WhatsApp message exchange between the respondent and Mr. Jacob Collins, the husband of her daughter, discussing a rendezvous at the Millstone Inn. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mr. Collins is the son-in-law? Yes, Your Honor. Her face changed then. Not in disgust, but in disbelief. Like she needed to double-check what she just heard. Proceed. And proceed he did. Message after message. One of them read, I love how secret this is. She'll never know. You're the only one who understands me. My wife looked like she wanted to disappear. The courtroom was mostly empty, just a few onlookers, a clerk, a bailiff. But even with so few people, the humiliation hung in the air like fog. Every time a message was read aloud, her shoulders hunched lower. Every time a location ping proved she had lied about where she'd been, she fidgeted in her seat. And then came the video files. The judge agreed to review them in chambers, but the mention alone was enough. Her lawyer tried to object, but it was weak. The files were metadata stamped, unedited, showing both parties' identities clearly. There was no interpretation to debate. When court resumed after the judge returned from reviewing the footage, the atmosphere had shifted. She looked directly at my wife and said, I have reviewed the material. This is not a matter of suspicion. This is a matter of fact. Her voice was calm, but final. The court recognizes the infidelity clause in the prenuptial agreement as valid and enforceable. The respondent forfeits all claims to marital assets, properties, and income generated during the marriage. My lawyer didn't react. He didn't need to. We had already won. But it wasn't just about the assets. It never was. Watching her face fall, watching the reality of what she had done finally land, was the part that made my stomach twist. Not with satisfaction, but with a grim, hollow ache. Because despite everything, I had once loved her. Deeply. I had built a life with her. I had trusted her to protect the family we created. And now she was just another person I couldn't look at without feeling like I'd been played. After the ruling, she approached me in the hallway outside the courtroom. No lawyer. No witnesses. Just her, tears streaking her face, makeup smudged, voice small. Please, she whispered. I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't know what I was doing. I stared at her, not with anger, but with something colder, detachment. You filmed it, I said. Multiple times. Categorized it. Saved it. You knew exactly what you were doing. She shook her head. It wasn't about hurting you. I was broken. I needed someone. And he was there. I laughed once, bitterly. You had someone. You just didn't want him. That was the last time I spoke to her. I walked away without another word. Left her standing there in the echo of her own decisions. My daughter had refused to come to court. Said she didn't want to see her mother, didn't want to hear her excuses. But when I came home that night and told her how it went down, she smiled. Not because it was over, but because someone had finally held her mother accountable. Later that week, word started spreading. Family members called. Some in disbelief. Some already heard something. A cousin asked if it was true. I said yes. One uncle called her a disgrace. A former friend of hers called me crying. Said she couldn't believe the woman she knew was capable of this. And slowly, one by one, the people around her began to vanish. Her phone calls went unanswered. Her texts left on read. Her social circle collapsed. Not because I wanted revenge, but because the truth has a way of echoing in rooms you never meant to walk into. It's strange, the way silence changes after chaos. After months of shouting, tears, and legal documents, the quiet in my apartment no longer felt empty. It felt earned. Like peace had stopped being an idea and finally arrived, weary and battered but welcome. My daughter and her son were still staying with me. What was supposed to be temporary stretched into weeks, then months. I didn't mind. If anything, I needed it. Her presence grounded me, kept me from drifting too far into the cold waters of detachment. And her son, barely one, became the heartbeat of our days. Laughing, babbling, learning to crawl like nothing in his world had changed. But things had changed. Everything had. My daughter barely spoke of her mother. It was as if that woman had been carved out of her entirely, surgically removed like a tumor. When her name came up, it was clinical. She messaged again. She sent another letter. She asked to see the baby. The answers were always the same. No, no, and no. Some part of me admired that resolve, but another part, one I hated admitting, felt sorrow. Not for my ex-wife. For my daughter. For the version of her that used to believe her mother would never hurt her. That part of her had died, and I watched her rebuild around the hollowed-out space where maternal comfort used to be. We developed a rhythm in our grief. I cooked breakfast. She brewed coffee. We took turns watching the baby. At night, after he was asleep, we'd sometimes sit in silence on the couch, both of us scrolling through our phones, not really reading anything, just avoiding the thoughts that came with stillness. On some nights, she'd talk. Not often, but when she did, I listened like it was oxygen. I feel like I'm broken, she said once, eyes wet but defiant. Like I let her into my marriage. Like I didn't see it coming. I shook my head. She manipulated all of us. You're not broken. You're betrayed. She didn't answer, just leaned her head on my shoulder. It was the closest we'd been since she was a child. I started seeing a therapist. It wasn't something I ever thought I'd do. I'd always believed in handling things privately, quietly. But after everything, I knew better. I had been holding in grief for too long. Not just the betrayal, but the humiliation, the shame, the knowledge that I had built a life with someone capable of dismantling everything sacred without blinking. My therapist was a soft-spoken man in his 60s. He asked the right questions, never judged. I told him about the laptop, the folder, the courtroom. He didn't flinch, just nodded and said, "And how do you feel now that it's over?" I paused. "It's not over," I said. "It'll never be over. But I'm not drowning anymore." Meanwhile, my ex-wife kept trying. First, it was messages, long, poetic, guilt-ridden paragraphs about how she missed our life, missed us, missed the way we used to laugh about stupid things at midnight. Then came the apologies, always followed by justifications. I was confused. He took advantage of me emotionally. It started as a cry for attention. I didn't respond to any of it. Not once. I archived the emails, blocked the numbers, forwarded anything legal to my attorney. Still, the desperation escalated. One day she showed up at the baby's daycare, unannounced, clearly hoping for a glimpse of her grandson. But the staff knew the situation. She was turned away. My daughter was furious, not devastated, angry, protective. It was the first time I saw her truly channel the rage she'd been carrying in silence. That same evening, she sat across from me and said, "Do you ever miss her?" I looked at her for a long moment, thought about lying, but I didn't. "I missed the version of her I thought existed," I said, "but that person never really did." She nodded slowly. "Me too." And just like that, the air cleared a little. Not completely, but enough to breathe. The news had long since spread through the extended family. Some people were shocked. Some pretended they'd always had suspicions. Her own sister stopped talking to her after the third voicemail. "You hurt your daughter," she said in a message I later heard by accident. "That's a line you don't come back from." Other relatives stayed quiet. No one took her side, not openly, anyway. There were whispers, of course. Always are. But the overwhelming sentiment was one of disbelief. It was one thing to cheat. It was another to cheat with your daughter's husband. The magnitude of it made reconciliation not just impossible, but unthinkable. And still, not everything was fire and ash. There were moments, small, strange, almost disorienting ones, where beauty crept in through the cracks. The baby's laugh when he smeared yogurt all over his face. My daughter singing softly to him while folding laundry. A neighbor who brought over a casserole, unaware of the full story but kind enough to check in. One night, we watched a comedy on TV and both laughed until we cried. Real tears. Not sadness this time. Something lighter. Something earned. And maybe that's what healing looks like. Not grand gestures, not sudden forgiveness, but these stolen moments of peace that remind you life keeps going. Then came the letter. It arrived by mail, handwritten, sealed with wax like some archaic relic. The envelope had no return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. I opened it because curiosity is a stubborn thing. Inside were 6 pages of apologies, memories, and the kind of emotional self-diagnosis only people with too much time and too little insight can produce. She begged for one last conversation, said she'd accept whatever boundaries I set, that she just needed to explain herself as a human being. I folded the letter and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk, unread by my daughter, unanswered by me, because some things don't need closure. They need distance. I passed by the old house last week. It was a mistake. I had taken a different route home from the office, trying to avoid a traffic jam, and before I realized where I was, there it stood, our former home, now gutted and cold with a for sale sign staked into the overgrown lawn like a tombstone. The windows were dark, blinds drawn in half the rooms, as if ashamed to be seen. I pulled over without thinking. Sat there, engine running, hands loose on the steering wheel, staring at what used to be our life. The house looked smaller than I remembered, worn down, like it aged overnight. I hadn't been back since I left. Not once. I didn't need to. But that day, I couldn't look away. It wasn't the house I missed. It was the illusion. The Sunday mornings with music playing and her humming in the kitchen. The way our daughter would run through the hallway with glitter stuck to her face, yelling about school projects. The little things that made it feel like home. Except now I knew those memories had cracks in them. She had already started chipping away at the foundation before I ever opened that folder. Maybe it started small, lingering glances, private jokes with my son-in-law. But eventually, it grew into something malignant. Something that destroyed more than just a marriage. It burned through trust, through bloodlines, through everything sacred. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't need to. The past was locked behind those doors, and I had no intention of opening them again. Back home, I opened that desk drawer for the last time. The one where I'd tucked away her final letter, the wax-sealed apology, or plea, or confession. I hadn't read it, hadn't even unfolded the pages. But that night, I took it out, held it under the warm desk light, and stared at her handwriting. It was neat, familiar, the kind of script you see on birthday cards and sticky notes on the fridge. I thought maybe I'd read it. Just once. For closure. For context. For something. But I didn't. Instead, I lit a match, held the envelope over the kitchen sink, and let it burn. The flames curled around the paper slowly, like it resisted being destroyed. But it didn't take long. A few seconds, and it was gone. Just ash and smoke and silence. I rinsed the sink clean, poured myself a glass of water, and stood in the kitchen barefoot, watching the moon through the window. I felt nothing. Not triumph. Not grief. just stillness. My daughter and I had come a long way since that night. She pounded on my apartment door with her son in her arms. We didn't talk about it much anymore. There was no need. It was a scar now, not an open wound. She was looking at new jobs, considering moving into her own place. Part of me would miss them, but another part, one I didn't expect, was proud. She was healing. She was building something again, and that meant I had done something right, even after all the wrong that had happened. We took the baby to the park last Sunday. It was warm, one of those rare days where the air feels clean and time slows down. He ran through the grass, chasing birds he'd never catch, laughing like nothing in the world could touch him. My daughter sat on a blanket, sipping iced tea, sunglasses on, hair tied up. She looked peaceful, not over it, not unaffected, but solid, whole. She turned to me and said, "I don't think I ever want to speak to her again." I nodded. "You don't have to." She exhaled, like she'd been holding that decision in for months. After the park, we got ice cream. Simple, sweet, unremarkable. But something about it felt symbolic. Like we were reclaiming something. Normalcy. Simplicity. A day that didn't revolve around damage control or therapy or screaming matches. A day without memory landmines. One night, a few weeks later, I came home to find a small cardboard box at my door. No return label. No handwriting. Just taped neatly, left like an afterthought. I knew what it was before I opened it. Inside were old photographs, vacation snapshots, anniversary cards, a silver cufflink I thought I'd lost. And on top, a note. Short. Printed. "I know I've lost everything. I hope one day you can remember something good." That's all. I didn't feel rage. Didn't feel pity. Just confirmation. She hadn't changed. She was still hoping to shape the narrative, still trying to leave her version of the story on my doorstep. I closed the box, walked it to the dumpster, and tossed it in. No hesitation. Some things don't need to be preserved. Some stories deserve to end without a sequel. Closure isn't a conversation. It's not a second chance. It's a decision. A lock you place on a door and walk away from, knowing you'll never try the handle again. A few months later, I changed my number. Got a new 101 from that past life had. New phone. New locks on my apartment. New email. Not out of fear. Out of certainty. I didn't want to be found. Not by her. Not by anyone who would ever ask me to reconsider the very peace I fought to regain. One evening, my daughter and I were sitting on the balcony. The sun was just setting, casting long golden lines across the buildings. She turned to me, her voice soft. "Do you think she regrets it?" I shrugged. Probably, but not for the right reasons. She didn't ask what I meant. She already knew. Her mother regretted the consequences, not the choices. There's a difference. One means guilt. The other means remorse. I'd never seen remorse in her eyes. The world didn't stop because our family imploded. No news story ran. No neighbors picketed. Life continued. And eventually, so did we. With new routines, new trust, new boundaries that would never again be crossed. And sometimes, that's all you can ask for. Some locks don't need to be opened. Not ever again. If you've ever had to walk away from someone who shattered the very foundation of your family, know this. Choosing peace over pain is never weakness. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is close the door, lock it, and never look back. Share your story in the comments. We want to hear how you found your strength. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories about betrayal, healing, and the hard-earned power of letting go. See you soon in the next story.